Okay, YouTube, welcome back to Living Off Grid. Hey, I've got some kind of updates on the cabin build for you and a major announcement, basically a design change on the cabin. Alright, so the first announcement is that we've got our 8x8 beams that used to be 14 foot joined together in the middle with a lap joint, and I'll show you that in a moment. They're now cut off at 24 foot, and they're setting on the pillars, all three of them. So now we have our foundation pretty well there. Originally we were going to run the floor joist with joist hangers or toe nailing in some large nails. I didn't like that. I've never liked that idea. It made sense for a minute, and then I got to thinking I need something more structurally sound. We want to overbuild this cabin. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to set the floor directly on top of the 8x8, so it's not hanging on anything. Instead, it's going to be sitting on 8 inches of good purchase, good flat surface, strong surface, instead of hanging off of something. That goes in line with the other change we're going to make. We originally wanted to make the walls out of 6x6s. 6x6 logs, 12 foot long, or some variant of length. And if you do the math, 24 foot long wall, 10 foot high, 12 foot logs-ish, we're going to need about 40 logs per wall. And 4 walls, that's 160 logs. Now, the eaves on the ends, we're going to do stick build anyway. So what we decided is to go with stick built 2x6. The reasons why are, number one, to get straight beams, 6x6 beams, the best method is to take 10 to 14 inch trees and cut them down to a 6x6. You might get an extra 1x or 2x in there somewhere, but your goal is to get a 6x6 that has the pith centered at both ends. And a smaller tree like that, it's a lot easier to do on the mill, and you're guaranteed less bending if you can center that pith. Well, I certainly don't want to cut down bigger trees and get a 1 6x6 out of it. I don't want to cut down a larger tree and cut a bunch of 6x6s out of it and then get a good significant portion of them that start bending on me. I've already done that. A lot of my trees on the hillsides, they do have some tension in them. I actually lost 2 logs trying to make 8x8s that I ended up cutting into lumber instead, because I just saw it start happening. They started bending and almost had an inch of rise in the middle as I took material off. That tension started showing up. So if I was to cut 10 to 14 inch trees, I have the trees, but they're pretty well concentrated in one location in my forest. The last thing I want to do is create a big hole in my forest. I don't think that's sound. It doesn't look good. It'll deplete my appearance of my property. So what I'd rather do is I'd rather use the 2x6 walls and cut down, let's say, honestly, I can get 2 big logs out of one good-sized tree. One good-sized tree should be sufficient to frame in one wall with 2 logs off of it. So 4 trees versus 100 plus, I think is the right way to go. All right, so another reason for getting away from the 6x6 wall is shrinkage. Generally, green wood's going to dry by a 1/4 inch per foot. My wall's 10 foot tall, so I'm going to lose 2.5 inches of height within 3 to 5 years on that wall. Well, that's tricky, because then your interior walls or any structures inside, like a set of stairs, they're going to be affected by that if they're tied to that wall. And really the only way to get around that is some kind of floating fastener that keeps the wall upright but doesn't quite secure it to the wall, if you know what I mean. Because it will not shrink at the same rate. So if we switch to 2x6 walls and do stick built, or what I call stick built, it's traditional framing, which is the way we're going to do the interior walls anyway, according to our plans, they're all going to move together. They're all going to shrink together. And the distance they shrink in the vertical when standing on end versus laying down is less than half. So I'm going to lose maybe 0.2 or 0.25 inches, or excuse me, 0.1 to 0.125 inches per foot. So an inch and a half, inch to inch and a half of loss over 10 feet is a lot easier to soak up, especially when you get into like your window sills and your door sills that you have to also account for. Yeah, I think it's a better move for us. All right, so we're gonna get to building here. I've bought a microphone so that you can hear me when I'm working away from the camera, but I think I got ripped off on Amazon. Go figure. It's going back. I am trying to slowly improve the channel and the editing and the video that you guys are seeing. I'm getting more and more subscribers, and I appreciate that. So I'm going to try to do a little bit better job. Try to talk a little less and actually do a little more. Let's get started. You may or may not be able to hear me too well, but what we're going to do, originally we were going to put an 8x8 from the, let me try to turn you here a little bit. There we go. We're originally going to put an 8x8 between these two piers on this end as well. I'm not going to do that now because we're stick building or framing. What we're going to do is we're going to sister two 2x8s together in replacement of that 8x8 beam. I've checked my load and span charts, well within range. Plus we're putting the sill board on the outside of that, which is also 8 inches tall. So that outside basically is going to be 16 inches tall, 2 inches thick. And when I say 2 inches by 8 inches, that's the actual dimensions I'm cutting my lumber to. I'm not cutting it to store-bought dimensions, which is smaller. So if you look at the load charts, a 2x8 on the load chart is, what, 1.5 inches by 7.5? No, we're not doing that. So, and I'm going to get to it. So follow along. Okay, so that's one beam. It's two 2x6s, 11 foot long. They're going to sit right on the piers with the other beams, and we're going to toenail that in to each side. The floor is going to sit on top of that, and we're going to tie all that together too. You can tell that I haven't swung a hammer in a while because I've been used to using screws, but I don't know if you know this or not, but screws are not structural unless they're specifically designed to be structural. Which reminds me, let me grab the camera and I'll show you the joint that I made between the 8x8s. And I did use structural screws there. So give me just a second, I'll pause the video and I'll show you. This illustrates the joint that we made here. We came in 4 inches and went 12 inches this way on both boards, so they overlapped. And then we used Simpson strong tie structural screws. Really impressed with those screws. They do a quite good tight bond. Those two joints on the other beams are super tight. This one would have been, except for I cut these with a chainsaw. This was my first one and it got a little wonky, so it's got a little bit of a gap here at the top. That's all on me. Now, technically this is not a structural joint in the terms of this. Not going to see a whole lot of loading this way. All the load's going to be, well, 90% of the load or more is going to be this direction, pushing it down. Okay, so it's sitting on the pier. This is 12 inches wide, the pier is 16. So I've also got 2 inches of good, thick, full width beam setting on the pier as well. We did not use any construction adhesive or anything like that because this is green. And construction adhesives do not do well with green lumber. Okay, there's too much moisture content. So you're not going to get the bond you're looking for. Keep that in mind. Anyway, I wanted to show you the joint. We're going to get back onto the build, and I'm going to put that 2x in from side to side, the sistered beams that I made. Alright, so here's my sistered 2x8s. I'll set it right across here just the same as the beam would have been. This one's pretty heavy, even though it's only 11 foot long. It's essentially a 4x8, 11 foot long, so there we go. Knew she'd fit. Oh, I forgot to mention that we did also square up the foundation here. When I cut the 8x8s to length, I squared everything up, and on one corner I was 1/4 of an inch wide. We addressed that, and corner to corner square measurement I was 3/8 out, which is pretty damn good. It surprised me. I went back and double checked. We were able to scooch one side over. We got that down to 1/4 inch. I'm going to leave that as good enough. It's 24 by 24 and 1/4 inch out. That's better carpentry than I expected out of myself, so I think we're good. Alright, so I'm going to toenail this in, and I think what I'm going to do first is I'm going to come in from the top, and then we'll do the side toenailing this way. The top one will hold it real good. Although, what I had to do there was shim it just a little bit to make sure it was the same height as the beam. I've got a little bit to learn. It's been a while since I've done this kind of stuff. The boards kept trying to twist on me a little bit because it wasn't really sitting on anything down there. I had to shim it up with a nail and part of my square there. It's alright, it'll come along. Okay, so what I did, hope you can hear me, is I'm using 3.5 inch 16D nails, and I'm putting them in at about a 45-degree angle into both parts. Now, I'm using galvanized because this wood is still green, has a lot of moisture in it, and the last thing I want is my nails rusting, so that's why I've chosen galvanized. It's a little bit more expensive, but I think it's worth it. Scratch that, make that a 30-degree angle. I spoke wrong. So, why screws? Why nails instead of screws? Well, like I said, screws are not structural. The threads on the screws basically lead to a fracture point, and they're also thinner at that point than a typical nail of a similar size. Okay, nails toe-nailed in, according to code, are nearly the same structure as a joist hanger. Now, codes vary from place to place, so check out your own codes. Would you have to use joist hangers or not if you're connecting to the sides? But like I said, we're not going to do that. We're going to sit right on top. So we're going to be toe-nailing in our sill beams and these connector beams here, and then everything's going to go on top. The next thing I need to do is the one down there. I think I've got enough cut to do all four, so I'm going to do those first. Check the building square, and then we'll start running the floor joist across. Now it looks like I'm losing daylight, so I may not get to the floor joist portion, and there's no sense in you watching me do this 4 times. So I'll probably pick this video up and do some more this weekend, and I'll have my son record for me. He wants to be my cameraman. No, I'm not putting him on camera. There's too many weirdos out there, so sorry Mom, I know you're watching. I know you'd like to see him on video. Maybe I'll do a private video for you. Alright, so that's basically how we're going to connect the beams together. I'll come back and re-square everything, make sure nothing moved. And if I have to take something apart and trim it, I will. I don't think I will. And then we'll do some more this weekend. Now, I've only got enough 2x8s cut to do probably a third of this. This 8x8 that I'm standing on here that was going to go here, I'm going to go ahead and cut it up into 2x8s. Now they're going to be a little on the thin side because but that's okay. It's still bigger than regular 2x8s, so we'll use those for floor joist as well. And hopefully all's good. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to end the video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I'm going to get to work here. and I'll shoot another video this weekend and get a little further along in the build. If I have time on Sunday, I may also drop another tree and at least get it staged for the mill so that next week I can get it cut up. Because the following weekend I'm only going to have about 1 day of build time, and then I'm going to take a trip to the Carolinas. The reason for the trip, well, it's a holiday for us. We're going to get away for a minute, but also we're going to a cabin of similar size. We're actually renting a cabin for a few days. I want to kind of get the feel of it. I want to see what it's like living in that cabin for a little bit, and also see if I can pick up some design ideas while I'm there. We did this a few months ago. Went to Mammoth Caves, Kentucky. You probably saw the shirt that I was wearing, and we rented a cabin up there. We call it research. Some people call it vacations. I call it research. So, all right. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.